Hello, this is Michael from Triple Crown Vapors. We're going to go over how to build a simple dual coil build on a TOBH clone made by Pro. So let's go ahead and build this thing. Start out with, we're going to get a small length of 28 gauge Canthal wire. Comes in a spool, and we've got a 3mm rod. All right. We're going to try for 6 wraps. But what you need to do is you need to have the rod in your hand, trap that wire with your thumb, okay? Come up at a very close to 90-degree angle, and wrap it 6 times as close as you can to each other. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. See how closely those line up? That's actually turned out pretty clean, so we don't have to do much cleaning up on that once we put it on the mod. Once we get those lined up, we can go ahead and clip those off. I generally try to leave one leg a little bit longer than the other. Just helps me keep things easier to go through the post once we get it on the mod. Once you get those lined up and wrapped, we're going to take the body of the mod, okay, the build deck, and make sure all of the coil, all of the posts are loosened up, so we got a nice clean shot through those posts, or the posts in through the post holes. Now if you look, you see how one leg comes up over top and one leg goes at the bottom. On the device itself, one post is generally going to be higher than the other. Okay, so I'm going to try to line up the top leg with the top post hole and the bottom leg with the bottom post hole. So with this one, I'm going to have to come in from this side. So let's go ahead and get these put in there. Where this build is so small, it's going to kind of pull the wires apart a little bit, and that's okay. We can work with that later on. So get it close to the post and bend both of the wires so that they're pretty well trapped. Okay. Now, snug up the negative post on the coil that you've already got put in there. That keeps it nice and in place while you're working on the next coil. Okay. Now that you've got the second one in, you don't necessarily have to bend that leg because you've only got the last one to go through. Tighten up the positive post, and we are just about ready to test the resistance on this sucker. Before you test it, before you do anything with it, you need to take all the legs, okay? See how 4 legs are sticking up like that? You need to make sure none of these legs are touching any other part of the atomizer. That prevents it from shorting out if you decide to fire it. Now, we're going to attach it to our ohm reader. Right now I'm using a smoke, I believe it's called a smoke omnimeter. We're going to test out the resistance. It should be about 0.6. And we've got it. So, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clip these wires. Now you don't have to get them, honestly you don't have to clip them. You can bend them until they break off. I normally try to clip them as close as I can. That way I don't interfere with the screw that I've got holding everything together. And it risks loosening up the screw, and it messes with your resistance readings. Now if you look, you'll see how the coils, they're kind of angled downward. We can fix that here in a minute. So, once we get ready to fire this, okay, you have 2 options. You can either work with it as is, as far as the if you want a micro coil or you want just a regular coil. I'm going to try to go for a micro coil. This may be too small of a gauge wire to get a good micro coil in this, but you should get a good coil regardless. Now, once you get the coils made and you've got the post tightened down, you want to make sure they're firing evenly. When you fire them, if you look, see how evenly they light up? They should be both firing about the same brightness, about the same time. Now, sometimes when you build it, you'll have one fire faster than the other, okay? If you've built your coils right, 9 times out of 10, that's because one of these posts in between the times that you fired it have become loose. So if you take a look, I'll loosen this up real quick, and that increases the resistance between this wire and the negative, and that decreases the time that, or increases the time that it takes for it to heat up. So if you look, see how that has a little bit of lag there? Oh, there we go. Probably got a little bit better. There we go. But see how that creates that big of a lag? So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that back down. Let's see how that does for it. Perfect. So once we have the coils all set, we're ready to wick, and what we're going to use today is called rayon. Rayon is very similar to cotton, except it is pure cellulose fibers. Do some research on it. Look, there's many resources online where you can find out exactly what's in it, and if that's what you want to use. What you're going to want to do is you're going to take the rayon, cut it in short length, and take about half of it, maybe a third of it, and get a nice little length of it. Take the rayon, twist it between your fingers. And what that'll get you is a nice little point that you can thread through that coil. So here, you'll see that I'm going to go ahead and thread this, if I can get it there. Thread that through that coil that I've made and pull it through. Now, if you're familiar with wicking with cotton, you know that you're supposed to wick it fairly loosely. Rayon is a little bit different. You need to pack it. You need to get it a little bit tighter in there, because rayon is the way rayon wicks. It will actually collapse when it gets wet. It won't expand like cotton does. Once you get the wick inside the coil, you're going to go ahead and cut it evenly with the outside of the mod. That'll give you plenty of room to stuff those wicks down into the build deck. So we're going to do this again. Try to see if I can get that threaded through there. Now, if you've got too, like right here, if you've got too much rayon to go through that wick, it's actually pretty easy to work with. It catches right there and it doesn't want to go through. All you got to do is pinch a little bit off, pull it to the side, and continue on pulling. That gets the rayon out of the way of the coil. See all those little fluff balls coming off right here? That's okay. That's just the way that this stuff is made. It's really fluffy, really kind of hard to work with until it's saturated. Now, once you get the wicks in there like you want them, you're going to go ahead and get them put onto the build deck. For each coil, you've got a long side, and a short side. And what I'll do with that long side is I'll just kind of place it right there on that build deck. And what that does is it gives it enough room so that it can soak up the liquid, but it doesn't choke out the coil. On the short side, we're going to do a little bit differently. We're going to go down into the build deck and then underneath the coil. That does a very similar thing, but on the TOBH, it has a very small section where that coil, it has a small section between the edge of the coil and the end of the build deck, or the drip well, whichever you want to call it. Once we get them situated, once we get the wicks situated where we want them, you're going to see a lot of fuzzball coming off of that, and that's okay. We're going to get those taken care of with a little bit of e-liquid. Now that we've got those on there, let's go ahead and see how well it fires. After I unlock it. Okay, it looks like this side is not going as good as I'd like it, so I'm going to double check, make sure all the posts are tight. Perfect. Now, With a TOBH, it has 3 air holes on each side, and that is so that you can adjust the airflow like you want it. These little tabs right here, here, and here, that's what control the airflow. So if you want a lot of airflow, you need to have all 3 of those holes on the outside of that tab right there, okay? And you want to get the end hole as close as you can to that tab. That'll give you the most airflow. There's 1 air hole that's covered up right now. And since I'm trying to get a little bit more airflow, I'm going to go ahead and rotate that just a little bit. It's kind of difficult to do. There we go. As you can see, all 3 air holes are open now. Now I'm going to put a couple more drops in, and let's have a little vape. Not bad. Not bad for 0.6. Thank you all very much. Again, this is Michael, and I'm with Triple Crown Vapors.